And with that being said, that jumps us right into our first segment of the day with Fox News reporter Jacqui Heinrich getting multiple questions in, not just with John Kirby, but also Jacqui Heinrich. As always, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thanks, Karine. John, on the Department of Energy's findings, the lab leak most likely caused the pandemic. How should Americans understand China's response here? Saying that this is politically motivated, it's a lie, there's no science to back it, and swatting down this information.
Well, I can't speak for the Chinese, and I wouldn't endeavor to do that. But just let me back up a little bit. The president made trying to find the origins of COVID a priority right when he came into office. And he's got a whole of government effort designed to do that. There is not a consensus right now in the U.S. government about exactly how COVID started. There is just not an intelligence community consensus. And I would add that one of the things the president did was he's the one who tasked the national labs, which report up through the Department of Energy, to study this as well. So it wasn't just an effort that was confined to the intelligence community. That work is still ongoing. But the president believes it's really important that we continue that work and that we find out as best we can how it started so that we can better prevent a future pandemic. I mean, that's the idea here, is to get ahead of it so that, should there be another one, or should there even be the signs of another one, we can better get ahead of it.
China, though, is pretty clearly accusing the Biden administration of smearing them and trying to say that this is baseless, people shouldn't believe it, and it's a politically motivated attack.
I'm not going to get ahead of where we are in the process, Jacqui. The intelligence community and the rest of the government is still looking at this. There's not been a definitive conclusion, so it's difficult for me to say, nor should I feel like I should have to defend press reporting about a possible preliminary indication here. What the president wants is facts. He wants the whole government designed to go get those facts, and that's what we're doing. And we're just not there yet. And when we're there yet, and if we have something that is ready to be briefed to the American people and to Congress, then we're going to do that.
How will the president respond to China, though, if it's determined that they lied about all this and now are trying to paint the administration as in such a negative light? How will he respond to Xi and
Well, let's not get ahead of where we are in the process right now. There is not a consensus on what caused COVID to start. The president wants to understand that so we can prevent better future pandemics. He's made that a priority, and we don't have an answer to speak to. And so given that we don't have a consensus, it would be foolish for me to get out ahead of speculation on hypothetical situations to come. We just aren't there yet.
So that was at the beginning of the press briefing, and he gets bombarded with the questions from the Wuhan lab leak, the U.S. Department of Energy's assessment. I mean, that was pretty much what this whole briefing was about. And at the end of the briefing, we have Karine Jean-Pierre on the podium, and Jacqui Heinrich gets more questions in, which is awesome and phenomenal. Let's go ahead and hear her questions regarding the U.S. Department of Energy, the assessment, as well as China. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thank you, Karine. Sorry, I wasn't sure. Just one more on the lab leak news from the Department of Energy. With all of this information coming out, and obviously the president had ordered a multi-agency effort that included the Department of Energy to try to get at the origins question. But looking, with hindsight 2020, and now these conclusions coming out from parts of this administration, was it prudent to have at the time some administration officials voicing support for one origins theory over another, like Dr. Fauci did in a couple instances? He said, my belief is that it's most likely natural transmission. Dr. Collins at one point sent an email to Dr. Fauci that was discussing the lab leak theory as a conspiracy theory. So given where we're at now, looking backward and with respect to how we talk about these things, if it ever happens in the future, is it prudent to have members within the administration voicing support for one theory over another if there isn't a consensus at that time?
So I do want to speak to Dr. Fauci because the political attacks on someone like Dr. Fauci, who and public officials more broadly, but Dr. Fauci, who has spent his career saving lives, whether it was the AIDS epidemic or as we are just coming out of this COVID, this once-in-a-generation pandemic, these attacks have been counterproductive. They have not been helpful. This is someone, again.
His advice hasn't been helpful. The guy tells us to take all these booster shots, right? They haven't even been really tested. I mean, they have been tested, but not on a large scale, or at least a scale of long-term studies that we would like to see. Lord only knows the ramifications that come out with that whole thing. He's also told us like triple mask, right? You could be 6 feet apart. But by the way, COVID's still out there. All of a sudden, you don't have to be 6 feet apart anymore. All of a sudden, you can stand right next to the person. You can breathe on people again. I mean, it's just so silly. The wish-washy, the read in the wind that Fauci's been. But, hey, he's done everything right. You see the same thing with Pete Buttigieg, right? The same exact stuff that she's talking about here of, well, people shouldn't politically attack Pete Buttigieg. He's doing an amazing job. She's going to say the same thing about Fauci. The guy gets paid more than the president of the United States for doing a terrible job. And as we mentioned, it seems to be a theme here that if you do a terrible job running something, that makes you qualified to run for president or some sort of higher office position and get paid a lot of money from the taxpayers to do, again, a very bad job. Prime example, Joe Biden. Another prime example, Dr. Fauci. Another prime example with the lady on the screen, Karine Jean-Pierre, getting paid 6 figures to do a terrible job.
Again, who has spent his almost entire career fighting for the well-being, the health of the American people. And so I just want to call out the political attacks. I think, again, it's not been helpful. Dr. Fauci himself has said he agrees with the president that we needed to get to the bottom of this, to get to the bottom of where COVID originated. And that's what the president did from certainly the first few months of his administration. And we have been grateful. Again, we have been grateful to Dr. Fauci's wisdom. We've been grateful to Dr. Fauci's advice during the COVID response. And we have been very, very clear here. We need to know more. We need to get to the bottom of how COVID-19 originated, and so that is why the president directed his IC and his intelligence community to get to the bottom of this. And so I'll leave it there.
More broadly than Dr. Fauci, though, I guess what I'm getting at is there was not so long ago a point where anyone asking the question of whether a lab leak was a credible theory that should be looked into, a lot of those people were derided as fringe,
Yes, thank you, Jacqui. This is literally what we talked about on yesterday's episode, where you couldn't even talk about this stuff. You couldn't even talk about Wuhan lab leak. Literally, you were removed or deplatformed from social media by big tech companies, YouTube being one of them, and now we're just able to talk about it willy-nilly. And now it seems as if it was a true story. It was no longer conspiracy theory. This is a freaking great question. Thank God we have somebody in the room that has this working, that knows what they're doing, that's intelligent. Thank God we got Jacqui, Wonder Woman, in there doing the job for the American people. You go, girl.
Conspiracy theorists. So are there lessons learned, looking back about how we discuss theories when we don't have all of the answers?
So here's what I can tell you is the president's commitment to getting to the bottom of this, right? That is what's the most important, so that we can share this with Congress, we can share this with the American people. That is why he asked the IC to do its work. And right now, there is no consensus. There is no consensus. You heard this from Jake Sullivan yesterday. You heard this from my colleague just moments ago. And we're going to do everything that we can. The president is asking his team to do everything that they can to figure out where it originated, because of what could potentially happen next, because of the potential of having another pandemic. And I think that's what's most important. That's what the American people should have confidence in, is that you have a president that wants to get to the bottom of this. Go ahead, Kellyo.
Folks, if you're new to the Bald Brad Show, I'm just looking for the answer to the question that was proposed, at which no point did she answer it. And I'm really wondering, you guys, if she is just that off her rockers, meaning Karine Jean-Pierre, that she's not capable of actually hearing questions correctly and then answering them. Because there's been times of her saying, well, this is how I heard the question, but nobody else in the room heard the question the same way that she did. So I'm really wondering if her synapses are off, like up here is just kind of off. There's something going on here, because it's a very simple question. Basically, Shay, should we be able to at least have conversations about certain components of things that are happening in the world without being labeled conspiracy theorists? Should we be able to actually have conversations without worried about being censored or removed or deplatformed or diminished in some way, shape, or form? Because there's a lot of things that we talked about in the past that all of a sudden come out to fruition that were true, and we were labeled conspiracy theories, right? MAGA supporters, rightists, crazy, ultra MAGA, all this nonsense. We were told it was Russian disinformation, Russian misinformation. We were told that it was misinformation and disinformation, regardless of the Russian aspect of it. I mean, there was a whole bunch of nonsense coming from the Democrat Party and progressive left there. But let me know what you think about that one. Jacqui Heinrich did a fabulous job there. Give her some love and support. Follow her on Instagram. I think she might be on TikTok as well. She deserves your love and support. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.